Hi, everyone. We're so glad that you can join us today. I'm Marielle. I'm CEO and founder at Pavilion, and I'm a former public servant. And I'm presenting today with all-star lineup of procurement leaders. I want to start by thanking the team at Beacon Bid for co-hosting this webinar with us. We're really glad to partner with them and the City of Houston to highlight the city's amazing work. Our session today will explore the City of Houston's procurement transformation, from their starting vision to how they've been implementing it, and the good, the bad, and the ugly, the lessons learned along the way. Really to go from being the Department of No to being more of a strategic function. And we're going to dive in just a few minutes, but before we do, we want to have a chance, as I said, to get you know better. So please go ahead and respond to that short interactive poll. In the meantime, just a few housekeeping items. First of all, the session is being recorded, and we'll share a copy of the recording with you after the event via email. We also welcome your questions and comments during the discussion. You can go ahead and use the Q&A feature on Zoom to ask the panelists a question while we're having the conversation. And you can also introduce yourself and add any commentary or share your own experiences in the chat while we're having the conversation too. And then finally, we'll save some time for questions at the end, and our panelists will do their best to respond to questions as they're coming in. With that, I want to go ahead and introduce you to our panelists. We're really excited to have leaders from the City of Houston Strategic Procurement Division here to share their experience and the city's procurement transformation journey with us. And I'm going to ask each of them to introduce themselves and share what's a key win or learning from this overall transformation work that you'd like to share to kick us off. So Jed, we'll start with you.
All right, I'm happy to be here. Thank you for inviting us to participate. I'm Jed Greenfield. I'm the City of Houston's Chief Procurement Officer. I would say, we're going to have a lot of ideas that we'll share, but ultimately it all comes back to effective ways to communicate. That is, communication verbally and through technology is certainly a key.
Awesome. Candace?
Hi, my name is Candace Gambrell, and I am an assistant director here in the Strategic Procurement Division, or SPD. I lead a team of category managers, and I kind of just try to help identify any inefficiencies, help design and implement some solutions to address those issues, and just help improve our overall procurement process, leveraging every technology and tool that we have in order to make the process smarter and more efficient.
Awesome. Yesenia?
Hey, my name is Yesenia Chuka. I am an assistant director for the City of Houston Strategic Procurement Division. In my role, I help lead our procurement strategy and oversee how we partner with city departments to deliver services that are compliant, efficient, and align with the city's overall goals. I would have to say so far, one of our biggest wins and honestly, one of the biggest lessons has been seeing the impact of early engagement. When procurement is involved during the planning phase, we can be proactive instead of reactive, which in turn reduces emergency, builds trust with our client departments, and shifts the relationship from transactional to truly being a strategic one.
Awesome. And last but certainly not least, Perla.
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Perla Redondo, and I'm a training administrator here for the City of Houston. And in my role, I lead staff trainings and introduce new resources and systems that help streamline daily tasks. And I would say that a big one is just being able to bring staff and any user, systems that, facilitate their daily tasks. So.
Awesome. Thank you. Okay. And we also want to give a chance to share a little bit about us. So Alexis?
Yeah, as one of your hosts and moderators for today, I'm Alexis Paulos with Beacon Bid. I've been an account rep here for 4 years, and it's been really a delight to work with so many agencies, helping them reach their goals and have some successful outcomes. So very excited about today's conversation. Thanks for joining us.
Great. And I'm Marielle Reed. I'm a former public servant with the City and County of San Francisco, now founder and CEO at Pavilion. And we provide a free platform for strategic procurement teams to help source vendors, get compliant quotes, and empower their departments outside of the formal RFP and bid process. And so for the last few years, procurement teams have used Pavilion to find and use cooperative contracts all in one place for free. We kind of started as this cooperative contract search engine. And while you can still use Pavilion to do that, we've recently built a whole new suite of new features, including with the City of Houston, that support procurement teams that want to work more strategically and deliver a better experience for their end user departments. In other words, taking inspiration from the City of Houston to go from no to go. And as always, these tools from Pavilion are always totally free for public agencies. So that's a little bit about us. And now it's your turn. So thank you all to those who filled out the poll. I'm going to go ahead and switch sharing of my screen so I can share the results. So bear with me just a moment. And I'm going to go ahead and change up our Zoom link here. All right. So can everyone see the poll results now? Great. Okay, I see some nods. So the first question we asked was, where are you joining from? It looks like we have a lot of kind of South, Texas, Florida, California, but some good distribution across the country and even Alaska, which is really cool to see. Okay, and let's see. Next, we asked, what kind of organization do you represent? So it looks like we have a lot of fellow cities here tuning in to learn more about the City of Houston's experience, but a nice group of higher ed, a lot of special districts and other kinds of organizations too in that bucket, and even some supplier partners, which is great. Welcome. We'll be talking a lot about kind of the nitty gritty from the procurement perspective, but hopefully that's also really helpful to you as partners that serve public agencies to learn from their experience as well. Okay, and then I love these word clouds. So we asked, because we're talking about procurement transformation, we asked you all to share how you think departments describe procurement at your agency today if you are coming from a public agency. And I see this continuing to evolve as folks are putting in their own perspective. But it's cool to see, I think, words like difficult or bottleneck, but also some really positive words like strategic and helpful. So it looks like we're coming in from kind of a mix of baseline experiences. And it's interesting, again, to kind of see, I like some of the ones like friends. That's really sweet. A black box out there on the edge, which I think we're going to talk a little bit as well. So thanks for sharing kind of where you're starting from. That's really helpful. And then we also asked, where do you want to go? So we're going to be listening to the City of Houston shortly talk about kind of their vision for procurement and how they turned kind of the vision for the department around. And so this is really helpful to just kind of see when procurement's going really well, what does that look like or feel like? And it looks like a lot of you said things like helpful, efficient, partner, collaborative, easy, transparent. So those are all really useful ways to frame and align on our shared vision for what procurement looks like when procurement is successful. And then finally, we asked you, what do you think is the biggest challenge between your baseline today, where you're coming from, that first word cloud, and the second one in terms of where the vision is? And so this is really interesting too, in terms of where you think the bottlenecks or challenges really are. It looks like a lot of feedback around communication, time, training. So communication, kind of mutual understanding and empathy looked like a big theme here. And then obviously, just making sure you have the time to do that because it's all work. So thank you all for contributing to that. Again, just great to get a snapshot of where you're all coming from and what, your experience is at your own agencies, and gives us as, panelists and hosts a bit more context into where everyone is coming from. So now we're going to jump in, and I want to start at the beginning. So Jed, when you stepped into your role, what was the perception of procurement within the city, and what were you hearing from departments and other stakeholders? Again, kind of just starting out.
Yeah, so I think I sit at an interesting position. So I've been with the City of Houston. It'll be 20 years this summer. I've been in the role of CPO since the summer of 2022. So prior to that, just a few years ago, I had a long history of being, at that time in 2022 and before, we were somewhat decentralized in our procurement. And so I worked for some departments that had to go through and work with the central procurement office. So I experienced a lot of the things that our client departments talk about directly. And so when I was coming into the role, I absolutely knew that this procurement was the department of no. I knew that it was the black hole that I sent a project in and I never knew what happened to it. So I had those as an end user. And actually this question is, the perception of where it was really that. So there was a lot of, I love those word clouds that came up because we experienced those exact same things that you all are talking about here, in that we were not partners, we were not helpful. That was the kind of feedback that we got, that we didn't understand what the end user department wanted. And so there was a complete breakdown of communication, which led to that whole status of no matter what the story was, we were always going to be the villain, always in every situation, because we didn't have that communication, we didn't have those things. And so when I stepped into the role, that's where we were at. And I was tasked with by our previous mayor, who said, Jed, do you think you can fix it? And my response to him was, if I have the team and the tools to do it, I think we can tackle it. And I think we can get from that department of no to that department of go.
Awesome. Yeah, I appreciate you being so candid about that. I think it's nice, probably for a lot of the teams joining, to just kind of hear that they're not alone in that feedback of like, I think some of the words that stood out, at least to me in some of our conversations, have been Department of No and the black box. It's like, it conjures the image of like the request going into the shredder, where it's like, where's this even going? What's happening? So thanks for sharing that. And now I want to ask the team, like, what was the vision you set out to achieve? So just like with those word clouds, we kind of all have our starting place. And I know you all had a pretty specific vision of, when you imagine procurement operating at its best, what that looks like. So can you share a little bit with us about that vision?
I'll start out here and then the team can jump in and add some more context to this. But really the vision was that we needed to move to being a partner, that we needed to get out of that villain role, get out of that role of no, get out of the black box, get out of all of those things. It can't all be done at once. You can't just come in here and swooply change it. And so it's where do you start, right? And I hope what some folks get out of this too is some examples of where can they go to just start the process. So the vision is exactly what was in you all's word cloud. We have got to move to that partnership, to that collaboration, because the one thing that you really see, that if you're that obstacle, if you're that black box, if you're that department of no, people are going to find a way around you. And so you're going to, which then leads to being more of a villain, right? Because then you're back saying you can't do that. And so you've got to take it really back to that basic step to saying, how can we improve our relationship and our working with you? What are tools that we can bring to make that better? And that was really the vision, is we've got to change and reset the relationship and reset the narrative and then build forward.
Awesome. Candace, Yesenia, anything you want to add there?
Yeah, I can just say that for me, procurement really is at its best when it looks like a true collaboration. So it's not just about processing the requests, it's about sitting down with departments early, getting an understanding of their goals, and working together to shape the right and lawful approach. So that means eliminating duplicating contracts, using any kind of spend analysis that may be available to spot opportunities, and making sure that we're leveraging the city's buying power to get the best value. When we operate strategically like that, procurement really becomes more of a partner in achieving the city's objectives, as opposed to just another checkpoint in the process.
And I agree 100% with Jed and Candace. To me, procurement operating at its best is proactive, it's transparent, and it's solutions oriented. Going to the compliance, right? The compliance is there, it's just embedded in our processes instead of it being a final hurdle. So 100% agree.
Okay, well, thanks for sharing that. And I think, like many of us saw with the sort of word cloud exercise, there's a gap that exists oftentimes for procurement teams between this vision that we have that's really clear kind of in our brains and the lived experience of our teams and departments. So I'd like to know how you started to get buy-in from city leadership and departments to make these changes. And I think, Jed, you gave a nod to that at the very beginning when you said, hey, I kind of had this mandate. I kind of had the political air cover to go ahead and make some big changes, which definitely is helpful. So curious to hear, like, was there skepticism and how did you address it? How did you really start to get that essential buy-in?
Yeah, I think the first thing that I did is I said we've got to go and we've got to talk to our client departments, because we got to understand where they're coming from. Again, coming into this as years of an end user, I knew what my experience was. And so I would go to the departments. I called it our listening tour, where and it is just that. And I will tell you, if you want to try to work on moving to that second cloud of partnership, helpful, collaborative, smooth, this is probably one of the biggest ways to do that, is just to go listen. And it is a listening tour, meaning you need to do this and you need to not respond. You just need to listen. And I'm telling you, your client departments, for all those procurement officials out there, they'll say things that you'll want to respond and say, you can't do that. but you just need to hear them out. And so that's how we started, is we got to get a starting point. We got to hear where they're at. And so I would go and I would start off and say, listen, I've been in your shoes working with the department, the central department here, and I know what my frustrations were. Can you tell me what yours are? And then I was silent and I just took notes and I listened. And that's a hard thing to do because you really want to respond and you want to defend. It's human nature, but you just listen. No matter how crazy some of the suggestions they may give are, you first listen, because when you listen, that's when you start building that partnership to say they heard me, right? And then separately later, we would come back and say, okay, I heard you. Here's what we can and can't do. And then you start having those more productive conversations. But you've got to start from that point to build that relationship, to just hear them out and hear what they have to say. And I think that's a huge piece, which is why at the beginning I said communication is really important, whether that's in meeting with them or in the tools that we provide. It's communication, which is the number one.
Yes, once you're able to listen first and understand the frustration and where it's coming from, that was our goal here. And once we had that, we had the clear picture, right? We're able to position the transformation as a way to solve the bottlenecks, right? Which is one of the words that was in the word bank, not just for better and faster service, but also for strong compliance. So when the departments realize that this listening tour wasn't about adding more red tape, but about making the process easier and more transparent, that's when you get the buy-in and the relationship starts to grow.
Awesome. Yeah, I know a friend in marriage counseling, I think, gives her clients similar advice of just start with listening. You're going to hear some crazy things. You're going to want to be defensive, but just start to rebuild that relationship and trust. And so I definitely see some parallels there. We've talked a bit about, mayoral kind of executive leadership. We've talked about departments. We haven't yet tapped into your internal team. How is procurement and the procurement team really feeling about some of these changes? And what's it been like internally? How did you get your own team on board with this shift in how procurement operates?
So I think a lot of this, certainly there was very low morale on the team. So when you're in that sort of a battle relationship with your client departments, it's hard to feel positive about what you do. And so just in general, just the sort of mood here from the interaction of client departments was difficult. I think former leadership created some challenges in the morale and what people were doing. And so we knew that we had to do this multiple pronged approach, right? We needed to work on fixing that with our client departments, but we also had to fix it internally. If we didn't fix it internally, none of the things that we wanted to change with our client department would go into effect. Your team is your delivery method for any of the changes you want to do. It doesn't matter how big or small your agency is, you can't do it alone. Everyone's got a team. And so it was going back and understanding, okay, how can we, with the things that we're going to implement, the things that we're going to bring forward, how can we educate the team on how ultimately this is going to help their job and their process, right? I like, again, some of those word clouds, smooth, right? Your internal folks want that just as much as your end users do. Helpful. Everyone wants to leave at the end of the day of work thinking they helped somebody. And so if you change those, if you start to change that narrative, you start to also change morale. But you have to also do things that are very deliberative, right? So we have a wonderful team that's a morale team here internally in our office. So they came and approached us and said, hey, we would like to do this. We would like to start doing things that get us out of just the mundane. And that goes a long way to getting them in a headspace where they can start taking the new stuff instead of feeling beat down like, oh, here's a new change, here's a new change, here's a new change, to here's a tool that's going to take your relationship and start to move it from difficult to helpful to partnership to collaborative.
Yeah, I think that's great. Just as you said, the listening tour, validating and creating that trust and ensuring that everybody's going to kind of be on those same pages. I want to talk about how you actually brought this vision to life. So once you did those pre-steps, what were those next first concrete steps you took to start shifting from reactive to strategic?
Okay, so we started with early engagement, for example, monthly meetings with our client department liaisons. That created a structured way to talk about needs before they became urgent. We looked at transparency. A lot of the friction that was coming from our client departments was not knowing where a project stood. We saw the word black hole in the word bank, right? So we asked ourselves, how do we make this process more visible? That's when we started building systems that allow client departments to see exactly where their projects are in real time, what stage their project is in, and what the next steps are. So that way they're not left guessing or constantly, following up with an email.
And I'll just also add to that another big change that we made was setting very clear timelines for every procurement method. So departments now know exactly what to expect. We have a 45-day timeline for direct awards, 120 days for ITBs and CBs, and then 180 days for more complex procurements that involve the evaluation processes. So our RFPs, RFQs, our BVBs. So this kind of gives everyone a realistic sense of when their project is going to be complete. And in addition to that, we also built a very strong intake process so that when a project comes into procurement, it's complete and ready to go. There's no more chasing down missing funding information or scope details, because before that back and forth was a huge headache for both our team and for the client department, and it really just bogged down the whole process. So now we've set very clear expectations for departments and for our own team, which has reduced anxiety and eliminated the constant who's doing what and when questions.
Amazing. Yeah. Having the resources available, being transparent, and then guiding individuals of where you can get their questions answered and when. So with that, we know that technology plays a huge role. Yesenia, you said you built things for this particularly, but can you share just a high-level overview about the role that technology has played in this transformation and the problems that you are looking to solve for procurement and those departments using technology?
Yeah, I think so. Technology plays a big role in a lot of the successes that we have realized to date and what we've seen. So one thing you should know about me is I have wife-diagnosed ADD, and so I will jump from one thing to the next, and I have a lot of great ideas, and I should pause here and mention that I do have the best team in the world that works here, many of whom are here on this panel today, that keep up with my, hey, we should do this, now we should do this, hey, if this technology can do this, we should do this, right? So they appease my ADD nature, and actually you'll probably see some examples of this where I give very short runway to get something done just because we want to launch it out. But I think that's important. Part of this was if Domino's Pizza can figure out to tell me where my pizza is in the process of coming to my house, certainly we can use technology and design something that will let our client departments know where things are at. We'll communicate now to the supplier community where things are at. And it really sort of blossomed from there. Well, what technology do we have? Let's look at it. Let's invest in it. But, and this is why, a PERLA is important for any organization, then come in the back end and make sure that our people are trained in knowing how to do it, because I can create the best tool in the world. But if I don't give those instructions, both in an initial training and then continual backup and resources, then I just have a piece of technology that's sitting there. It has to be used. It has to be communicated. So that was our starting point to say, let's start to utilize technology that we have available to us. Let's start looking at what's out there to help solve some of these problems that we were experiencing.
And also to add to that, so one of the huge challenges that we had with our previous e-procurement system, and meaning the system that we utilized to post our solicitations, was that it was just not user-friendly. We at first had like our homegrown system, which, is lacking a few features, and which is, prompted us to make a switch to another system, which we, trial and error, offered a few more things, but it still didn't turn out the way that we wanted. We also received a lot of feedback from our supplier community as well as our internal users. And the feedback that we received, like I said, we were, had to be on the listening side and hear the feedback in order for us to grow and make the necessary changes. So we were losing, some suppliers who, gave us feedback that their system at the time was just too complicated, that they just rather not do business with us. So we knew we definitely had to make a change. And another thing that was detrimental was that our previous system did put a limitation on how many suppliers could be reached for a solicitation at a given time. So we knew that at that point we weren't being compliant, so we definitely had to make those changes. And so overall, we just knew we needed new tools. Priority was for it to be user friendly for all users, meaning like our client departments or users or buyers here, suppliers. So that's what really brought us to Pavilion and Beacon. And then bringing these two systems together definitely was a game changer for us. So.
Well, we're happy to be here with you and on this journey. Jed, you said a short runway, but you guys have done it and taken off so beautifully. So we're thrilled to do it with you. For the agencies that are here watching and listening and have concerns that new tools or new technology will really slow things down or just add too much complexity, what surprised you both about how teams and departments responded to Beacon Bid?
I think for sure it
Yeah, I
helped
think,
us build, oh,
no, go ahead.
I think it helped us definitely build a relationship of trust. I think that once we started rolling out systems that were efficient, was easy to maneuver, it definitely freed up time for users to focus on other, roles that their job requires. So, and it was an overall better experience for the suppliers as well. So I think that just spoke for itself.
And to build on that, I think that a good key point here is that Perla mentioned this. When we were looking for a new system, we started a system that we thought was going to be one thing, and it turned out it was not. It actually complicated things. That is a hard lesson to learn. And I think a takeaway from that is sometimes the path to success requires a few steps in failure, and it's okay. And we experienced that. And so we saw, hey, as Perla did a great job in summarizing, our internal staff was having problems, supplier community was having problems. And so we looked for a new tool and were able to find something that was very intuitive to both of those sides and really expedited the way that things moved. And so that made a huge difference because our internal clients, our employees, and our suppliers all saw that we heard them, we recognized it, and we made and pivoted and made a change. And so I think that builds huge amounts of trust and buy-in to say, okay, I was heard, right? Because we made that shift and brought in something that was easier. And now we're reaping the benefits of that as folks are using this and saying, hey, thank you. This really is a lot more intuitive for us to get to where we need to be.
Yeah. And, one of the biggest surprises for me, at least, was how quickly we're able to implement Beacon Bid. And as Jed mentioned, we were able to knock the implementation out in 45 days. That was the goal that Jed set for us, and we made it happen. And for me, that really came down to having the right internal team in place, but also the external teams in place. When you have clear communication, you're able to stay focused and keep that momentum going. So since implementing Beacon, we also partnered with Pavilion to create a tool that, supports a better experience for departments to make informed decisions. We also made City of Houston awards contract information available directly in Pavilion in collaboration with Beacon Bid. It's helped us embed policy into the workflow so compliance happens naturally instead of feeling like an extra step. And when you do that, it actually reduces friction instead of adding to it. So overall, I'd have to say that Beacon Bid and Pavilion have provided not just user-friendly tools, but they also provide highly responsive teams. So that level of partnership has made a big difference for us in implementing these tools.
So, and thank you. We've been honored to be part of this journey as Alexis has shared as well. So I think one of the things that makes Houston's transformation so compelling is that you didn't just change internal processes, but like you said, Yesenia, you actually built new tools to deliver on the city's vision. And these tools are now available to other public agencies. And I see in Q&A, we've already gotten a few questions about like, hey, what are you using? What are these tools? What do the journeys look like? So let's go ahead and share what you built, and let's have you take us through the City of Houston kind of experience now and the problems that you sought to address through technology. So I'll go ahead and help share our screen here.
Okay, of course. So I'll walk you through this from the client department's perspective. One of the biggest things we wanted was a simple, user-friendly front door for our client department, something that helps them to find suppliers they can work with while staying within the city's compliance requirements. So we partnered with Pavilion to create that experience for our client departments at no cost to the city. The idea is that a user can enter the product or service they're looking for, and Pavilion guides them towards suppliers and cooperative purchasing options they can use without automatically needing to run a brand new competitive bid process. Now, if what they need does require a competitive bid process, that was another challenge we wanted to solve. That's where our partnership with Beacon Bid comes in, as these systems are connected. So here, let's say I'm a user within a client department. I can just go to Pavilion. We've customized this so that it fits our categories, our agency thresholds, requirements, and through integration with Beacon, our awarded contracts. So users can see pathways and suppliers specific to our agency. Let's say I'm looking for janitorial services. I can just enter my need in the search field, select the appropriate category within the dropdown, set my budget, and I'll see suppliers that I can work with that meet the city's requirements. In this case, we're showing the user existing city contracts that meet their criteria, since using one of our awarded contracts is the easiest and fastest way to purchase. But if there weren't any available City of Houston contracts, depending on their budget, the user would see open market suppliers or suppliers on awarded cooperatives pre-approved by the City of Houston. And if there weren't good options there, then we'd run a new competitive bid process through Beacon Bid. But in this case, there's an awarded contract already. So as a user, I can quickly see the awarded supplier and the existing City of Houston contract number, as again, these records are linked between Pavilion and Beacon Bid. The client department can source a few supplier options and save those to a list, then send their search results of suppliers to our procurement team in one easy click. Once that request is shared with procurement, the client department user can still see a summary of their request and a confirmation that procurement will take it from here. And procurement also has access to that same summary. Department users can come back to this page at any time to see the real-time status of their request. They can check the status of a vendor selection and any other tasks that are associated with that particular request. So what this does, it allows us to deliver transparency in the process and a smooth handoff between the client department and the procurement team. Then our procurement team receives the requests from the client department with a notification via email. That email links to the request to be reviewed and is managed in Pavilion. Procurement can also see the same search results that the department user saw to verify their request. Procurement then contacts vendors on behalf of the client department and updates the request accordingly in Pavilion. Even as procurement takes some next steps, both parties can see the request summary, which shows vendors selected, contract records, status of communications with vendors, quote values, vendor decisions, vendor messages, and any other tasks the department user or procurement needs to do in order to complete the request in Pavilion. Once quotes are entered and a vendor is selected, we can also see cost savings, which are automatically calculated as the difference between the highest quote and the quote selected, which can help reinforce the value of the cooperative's competitive process to the end user departments. And finally, procurement has visibility into all agency-wide requests, including who initiated the request and who from the procurement team is working on it. So overall, just to recap, Pavilion is where City of Houston Client Department requests start. It's a user-friendly front door for client departments to search, develop sourcing lists, and submit their requests to our procurement teams. By the time we get these requests, a lot of the correct groundwork has been done, so it makes the handoff smooth and the client department can always see the status of the request. Pavilion helps search for suppliers who are already on existing City of Houston contracts and available via cooperative contracts. But if the client department is looking for a project that requires a competitive bid, that's where Beacon Bid is essential. So imagine here in this scenario, there was no good fit for the need that the client department just ran, and the budget is above the competitive threshold. We need to run a formal competitive bid process, and that's where Beacon comes in. So I'm going to hand this over to Perla.
Thank you, Jasenia. So as Jasenia mentioned, imagine that there was no good fit that the client department just ran. We would then have to come into Beacon, and which is what I'm going to be walking you through today. So one thing in Beacon is at the beginning of a solicitation, and you're getting to post one, we worked with Beacon on creating templates, which could be easily managed by admin on Beacon. And you could have these templates built out that when next time that you're coming into creating one, there's going to be already pre-populated documents within the template or options that you've already set apart. So these can be all customized per that template. As you're creating your solicitation, of course, you'll enter important details about the solicitation, like titles, categories that will directly ping your suppliers that a solicitation with a category that relates to their business is put out there. They will receive notification. You can make note of the departments that are involved with this purchase, and then you can add additional documents of that solicitation. Once you've gathered that basic information, you can move on to entering your dates. So that's dates like your release date, the date you want it to go live, the due date, so when the bid does close, and also set dates like question deadlines, pre-proposal or pre-bid meetings, things like site visits. So that could all easily be done within the important dates section. The next section is our contact information. So as the user that is signed into the account, this information would populate. However, if you are creating the solicitation on someone else's behalf, then you can easily select it from the drop-down. The next great feature on here is that because, again, referring back to our templates, in the eBid section is where you get to build out how you want those suppliers to respond to the solicitation. Driven by that template, you can make required forms auto-populate if you have a standard set of forms that are required. In this example, we're showing you your standard required documents for an ITV, but you can customize those. And then you have the ability to utilize the line item feature, which is great. You can copy and paste or import line items, so that saves tedious time of having to type one by one. And the last and final stage here is our review, which it gives you one good preview of what your solicitation looks like. So that gives you the opportunity to verify dates, documents that you're posting. You get this nice, great view that shows exactly what your suppliers are seeing, what is being required for them to complete. That way you can make sure that you indeed do have it set up in the way that you want to receive responses. And the last, towards the bottom of the review page, so you have the list of suppliers who are being invited based on those categories that you selected at the beginning of the solicitation. So once you get that ready to go, you would hit publish, and that solicitation would go live at the scheduled date.
Beautiful. Once that solicitation is open and closed, it's a really nice workflow. We heard earlier that there was a limitation on suppliers previously. You're going to reach far and beyond because there's no barrier for those suppliers to access those solicitations once they're live. With that easy eBid form, internally you'll be able to click on your eBids tab to see who has submitted this. Once it's able to, it's closed out, it's unsealed and ready to go, you can look at this online and do view summary. So you're looking side by side of all of these responses of what you've asked from those suppliers on there. You can also take this down. You can assign evaluators so that everyone can do this online and be brought through a really nice workflow. Once that's completed, you can go here and download that tabulation so that you can take this offline, have a clean report side by side. It's going to highlight your lowest tabulated bidders, give you that pricing. Any of those response forms that you requested from the supplier are again going to be side by side who submitted it and just a clean click to download. Of course, doing the math for you, which we love, is your evaluators' numeric scoring, some commentary, and then who essentially won this solicitation here. From a closed solicitation, you can easily take this information and just transfer it over to a contract. In the Contracts tab, and I'll pass it back to Perla to speak on this and how it funnels through.
Thank you. So great. Yes. So once the solicitation has been closed and you're completing that award process, you would navigate to, it will take you once into the contract. In the contract, some information will carry over, of course, from the solicitation itself. And as you can see on the screen, important details about that contract are put in place. Things like the title of the contract, your term, so your start and end date of that contract, who is the contact for that contract, even things like extension options. You would have the list of important documents referring to that contract. So that information would all be there. And then a neat feature too is that it also ties it back to solicitation. So you would see a reference number that would take you all the way back to solicitation that was utilized. Once this information is saved, and here's where the Pavilion and Beacon relationship begins, is that it ties it back to Pavilion, making this contract now searchable. And the next time that you're having a client department, creating a new request, they can utilize Pavilion to start and see if we have an active contract. So this just helps ensure that our client departments are not missing any contracts that we've already put in place. So, or they can use Pavilion to source vendors and begin the procurement journey.
Awesome. Well, thanks everyone for kind of taking us through that. Again, we were really excited to hear your feedback and shaped a lot of what we built around the vision that you had, which we've heard from other public, procurement teams is kind of a shared one oftentimes. And it's exciting to be able to connect more of these tools and systems across the public procurement space. I know we've all been frustrated by systems that don't talk to each other and information silos. As public servants, I certainly had that frustration. I think of myself as a former pissed off public servant in part because of that technological experience. So just really fun and exciting to be able to collaborate as a group across the city, Pavilion and Beacon Bid, to create some of these new tools, which are now available at low cost or totally for free for public agencies. And just a shout out, I think, to City of Houston. You guys aren't tooting your own horn enough, but you really shaped, I think, what this technology looks like by bringing us together and making this ask and kind of carrying that weight on behalf of the public procurement, profession. So thank you for your leadership there. I know we're coming up on time and we have a couple of questions that have come in through the audience. So before we shift over to audience questions, I want to just ask you all kind of one final question, which is, at the beginning of the discussion, procurement team submitted their visions for where they are now. And again, for many, there's still a pretty big gap. So what advice overall would you give to a procurement leader or a team who's really just kind of starting out on this kind of transformation?
Yeah, I would say, kind of going back to my opening remarks on improving that communication and using tools. And I hope that what you can see, what we did here, the magic behind these tools, right? So that demonstration of when I mentioned when the process is thought to be difficult, people work around you. What we did with these tools is we created the universe, right? So an end user department goes in and you saw through the demo, they type in what they need, what they want for sourcing. They get to an answer that we are always going to say yes to because we created the universe that they're operating in. That is revolutionary, and that's where you move from the villain to the hero, from the no to the yes, is through this technology really guiding them through where they need to be through automation and using those tools. And so start somewhere to just say, how can I get my clients to understand what that is, and then how do we operate that universe so that they still are making the decisions there, but every opportunity they're going to lead to is going to result in a yes because we've worked to get there. And so that's really where that's the secret sauce in utilizing these tools and combining that together.
I love that. Anyone else from the team want to add something before we open it up? I know that's a hard act to follow.
Yeah, I mean, for me, it starts with listening, right? Don't assume you know the pain points. Ask and listen. I would also say focus on one or two visible wins that can help build credibility. And it's not about becoming less compliant. You're building compliance into the tools that you're using. Which then to me turns into becoming more strategic. So
Awesome.
I would also just add one more thing. Never underestimate the power of a morale team. That has been truly transformative in our own morale here within SPD. It's just a group of volunteers. They get together, they celebrate everyone's birthday. Everybody has their cubicle or their office decorated for their birthday. There is a large monthly birthday celebration with cupcakes and cookies for everybody whose birthday was in that month. And it truly just takes away the drudgery of the daily grind. We're all here, we're all got a to-do list, longer than our desks and office combined. But having that chance to just kind of step away, bringing some levity to the day, I mean, that has made a big difference. And I know it's something that I truly enjoy and look forward to. If there's a cupcake on the floor, my afternoon is great. So I think finding those volunteers, that small team that can bring that little bit of happiness to everybody's day really makes a big difference.
Yeah, at the end of the day, we're all people with birthdays, and we want to like where we work and feel like we're working on stuff that's important and that matters. Awesome. Well, I want to open it up. I know we had a couple more questions kind of come in the QA. Some of these are a little bit more tactical. So I know Brandy from Fort Worth was curious to understand like your ERP system. I know we talked about Beacon, we talked about Pavilion, but what are the other kind of systems at play here was one of the questions. And then the other question was really around what tools you use for the intake system, which I think we might have covered kind of in that demo version. But anything you want to add on the tech stack kind of beyond Beacon and Pavilion here that might be important context for procurement?
Yeah, so we're an SAP shop for our ERP system, right? So there's still some back end stuff that happens between these systems and us going into SAP, and really a lot of the front end work that we did in terms of dashboarding where your project is and that initial intake of where departments are submitting. These were all tools available to us through Microsoft. So our regular licensing tools that we said, hey, we're going to take advantage of what we've got available to us, and then we're going to build from there. And so that's really where we started, is what do we have that's available to us at either no cost or low cost. And as you do that, and we've moved, right, as you're also going to ask questions as you move through that process. And those questions result, it's like Muriel said, to these relationships and these strategic partnerships of what we're now seeing the fruits of today.
Awesome. I see another question from Alicia Smith, who asked, when you did the listening tour, who did you bring, Jed, from your procurement team, and who did you speak to within the department? So very tactically, what did that look like? Who was participating?
Yeah, so at the very beginning, it was really me to department directors, because I wanted to make sure from the top that we were setting that expectation. And then it's more staff getting together with staff. So it kind of trickled through there, but that initial conversation where we're just out listening was really me sitting down and telling department directors, hey, where do you perceive there being problems? And then just building it from those conversations.
Awesome. Yeah. So getting kind of the leadership air cover so that staff could then meet and do the sort of implementation work. Great. And then Vanessa asked, and I think this one is for Alexa or maybe Alexis, sorry, or maybe Perla around Beacon. Does Beacon have the option to request and store signatures of all the parties needed for a contract to be executed? And will it notify us when a contract is expiring in case of a rebid?
I can hop on here and Perla can add. We do. So Beacon's contract management system has custom alerts available for you so that each user can follow contracts, whether it's department-wide or if it's just individuals overseeing it, and get that alert schedule for not only the contract coming up for renewal, but the signed COI or any documentation that might have an expiration date within it as well.
Great. Okay, I'm scanning, but I think those are most of our questions. I think there was one more actually that came in via direct message, which was actually about the supplier perspective. I know we've talked a lot about internal changes from the departments, executive buy-in, the morale of the procurement team, but we do have some suppliers who are also participating. How did you think kind of about suppliers as an important stakeholder in this process?
I think I could take that one. Well, I think for sure, like a way for us to measure the, how suppliers were doing was we actually have a team, a supplier management team that handles it's like your help desk for any help that a supplier may need. I think those significantly reduce related to system questions. And that was, I think that was proof that the change was a good one. So usually now the questions that are permanently received that go to that team are not necessarily system related, I would say.
Awesome.
I want to add, Mariel, to that
please.
is that the supplier experience is critical, right? When internal processes become clear and more streamlined, the suppliers benefit as well, right? We'll have clearer requirements, better timelines, transparency, and then that in turn helps build that healthy supplier relationship. So
yeah,
what benefits us also benefits the supplier community.
Yeah, no, that makes a ton of sense. I think what Jed said about kind of all paths eventually leading to yes, or being ones that you can say yes to, is also really beneficial for suppliers. And I know that's something we've thought about in building sort of the intake experience. It obviously is important in terms of suppliers being able to navigate the bid and formal solicitation process. And it's not something we talked about, but being able to automatically publish your contracts also benefits suppliers because you do include that piggyback language. That allows them to also, access other government customers and makes responding to your solicitations and formal bids, more attractive and valuable too. So there's some nice feedback loops, I think, to the systems that you've put in place. Really want to say thank you so much, Jed, Candace, Yesenia, Perla, for joining us and sharing Houston's experience today. I know this is still a journey that you're on, but it's been a massive and really impressive undertaking, and I think a great example to share with others from the public procurement community. And thank you to Alexis and Beacon Bid for co-hosting this event with Pavilion. So to recap a few key takeaways, I think most procurement teams have experience being seen as gatekeepers, the Department of No. This is also where the City of Houston started. And by introducing new ways of working together with end user departments, that listening tour, leveraging technology, the City of Houston has really changed its procurement function from a black box, Department of No to a much more strategic partner. And some of the changes that you heard about today that they implemented were around establishing, that listening tour, that new trust, building rapport with their end user departments. So they come to see the role that procurement plays and think about them as collaborators. And then also leveraging and creating some new technology to deliver on the vision that they had, from a free user-friendly front door, for intake with Pavilion to an easy to navigate experience for the formal solicitation and bid process with Beacon. These tools together are really helping to set their departments up for success and make the process more transparent. And as Jed again said, I'm going to steal that line, Jed, just, paths can lead. Don't set up any path that you would say no to. It's like all the paths can lead to yes, and they're much more smooth in terms of the operation. So we're really proud of Pavilion to be supporting the work of agencies like the City of Houston. And if you do want to see how Pavilion can help your team get to yes faster, you can book some time with us here or DM me. Happy to give you a tour anytime.
That. And likewise, very grateful to be here. Thankful for everyone to take the time and sit here and learn and share an experience with us. At Beacon Bid, we're here to support agencies, whether they're at the beginning of this phase, middle, or just trying to make other streamlined efficiencies. I'll also put our website in there. But thank you all. Chat soon.
Thank you.